Welcome into the Blurred Wire, everybody. Today we are talking about the Loki finale. Wow, it was absolutely insane, but so good, so incredibly good. It's what we've come to expect from Loki, really. So we're going to talk about theories, think about what it means, and where Marvel's going to kind of go forward from this. Because we're actually going to kind of experience a bit of a content drought. I think the next show is supposed to be Echo in 2024. And then we don't get another show until Agatha in probably October. Probably you're gonna do like a Halloween thing with Agatha, which I'm probably not even gonna watch because I don't really like that kind of stuff. But so it's gonna be a content drought for a while. So we're gonna have to sit on Loki and what it did for a good amount of time. I wish I had a chance to cover every single episode, but this was kind of a crazy week for me. I was moving. So it got really tough to start a new job. So I apologize. Wish I could have covered every single episode. So we'll have to put it all together in one. Loki Season 2 finale and review. First of all, Loki Season 2 was absolutely phenomenal. There's a reason why it's Marvel's best show. And I honestly think when they started Loki, like when they did Loki Season 1, they were not really planning on going to a season 2. Honestly, I think for most of the shows, they weren't really sure exactly what they were going to do, like WandaVision 2 or Falcon and the Winter Soldier 2 or anything like that, having a second season. I think for a lot of them, these were kind of designed to be miniseries. And, even though Loki Season 1 ended with a cliffhanger that could have been, they're saying now that they always intended for it to be 2 chapters, Loki Season 1 and then a Season 2. But based upon how everything happened with Kang and the way they left it, kind of was left wide open. And so, basically, if Loki wasn't done as well or wasn't received as well, we probably wouldn't have gotten the second season. Because sometimes when a movie does poorly, you still have to put out the second one in order to continue the story. However, with Loki, it was done beautifully. And it left the door open for them to come back and finally tie up all of the loose ends that we have been experiencing. I still think I like Season 1 just a little bit more. I think this is one of the most satisfying conclusions to a character arc. I just think the feels, especially when I rewatched Season 1 a little bit ago and just binged it back to back, once it all makes sense, the emotional aspects of it really kick in. And, I think in this season, it made sense to kind of move away from the Loki-Sylvie romance, because that was kind of the driving point towards the end, and that's where all the feels really kicked in about Loki learning how to not be selfish. And now in this one, he's kind of adopted that role, and he's actually trying to show Sylvie how to not be selfish and not let her own problems get in the way of the entire multiverse. And so it was interesting when just the whole season was super interesting, especially when he, the fact that he was able to learn to control his time slipping. And then he went back to see He Who Remains. And he was like, you think this is the first time we've had this conversation? And then Loki just stops time and was like, you think this is the first time we've had this conversation? It was absolutely dynamite. And, it's hard to keep going on theories because they kind of put a button on it, It's the end of Season 1 left everything so open. Multiverse of War and all of that stuff. And this one just kind of closed it, when he went into that loom, he destroyed the loom, and then put it back together using those time branches, which I thought was, just the sickest, I don't want to say coincidence, but the fact that he's taking branches and he puts them together into Yggdrasil as the Norse tree that literally has branches on it. It was glorious. It was the glorious purpose that he was looking for. And I think a lot of people, I was listening to another podcast that was talking about the contrast between the way Loki feels now and based upon what he wanted in Avengers. And in Avengers, he was always talking about I want this throne, I want to rule over people, and he's like, freedom is the world's greatest lie. I'm going to save you from freedom. You're welcome. And like, if you could watch event, I might do that right now. I might watch the first Avengers movie where Loki was at his villainous, because in Loki, in Thor, Loki was still just trying to get a family and get people to notice him. And like, his motivations were just to make his father proud, make his father happy. And so that was, it was kind of touching. He didn't quite seem as villainous in Thor. He just seemed misguided and confused. And in Avengers, he went on to full villain, you know. And, people say it was influenced by the Mind Stone. But it's also, it is part of what Loki wants. The Mind Stone brings out a bad part of you, but it was what Loki wanted. He was like, I want a throne now because my family doesn't love me anyway. So whatever, now I'm just going to rule these people. And now that he's gone through this journey of the TVA and he gets this family, he gets these friends, he's like, oh, I don't actually want to rule people. I just wanted to know people loved me and accepted me for who I am, And now that he does that, you look at the entire decision making that he had. It's like now he has the throne, but none of the adulation, none of the praise, none of the actual like he has the kind of control, but he's all alone. And he has no one to like worship him, have towers built to him, or anything like that. And he did all of that to preserve free will. Because, he who remains told him, like, the temporal loom was just a failsafe. So, he who remains knew that if he got stabbed, like in the first season finale, he told Sylvie that, like, well, I'll just end back here anyway if you kill me. Which I think he was kind of bluffing her, because he kind of wanted to make it, he kind of wanted to allow, I think if he wanted, ultimately, I think he wanted Loki and Sylvie to run the thing, but I think he had another plan to offer to them to run it, but he was actually going to be running it, and they were just going to think they were running it. I think he thought that might appeal to Loki, and he might be able to make Sylvie do that. But even after killing He Who Remains, the temporal loom, he reveals, was just a failsafe. It was never designed to handle more branches. It was always going to destroy the other ones and just leave the sacred timeline. And there was nothing they could do about it. And so that way the multiversal war wouldn't stop. And it really kind of shows like the interesting benevolence of He Who Remains, because he was willing to die and have no Kangs ever exist just to prevent the multiversal war. Like, that is such a horror that he was willing to be dead and, not be in control and just let the temporal loom maintain the sacred timeline so that when branches branch out, instead of pruning them, it'll just shut down, destroy the TVA. Fine, only the sacred timeline remains. So, he also was willing to, kill everyone in the TVA to get that point across. But, it's like, obviously, He Who Remains, his plan, he kind of had to be secretive about it and wipe everyone's memories, because, like, if he told the variants all this story about the multiversal war and everything, how many of them would have been, I don't think any of them would have understand that's why they were ripped from their timeline. Like, nobody would have just volunteered to be like, you know what, I will help you defend it from these alternate versions of yourself. Because it's not something they would ever experience, because this is a war that happens a century in the future for most of them. Or, wildly in the future. People aren't, it just wouldn't work. So I think He Who Remains makes a lot more sense than maybe he gets credit for, I guess. But I kind of went off on my own little tangent there. Either way, Loki destroying the loom and creating this branch, it's kind of unclear exactly as to what this means. I think, like, obviously it means Loki is just allowing branches to grow, and he's going to hold them together and watch over them in the sacred timeline. No, the sacred timeline in, I guess, the Loki tree. Yggdrasil? Is it Yggdrasil? And so I guess that means the Kangs are free. So they are free to fight a multiversal war right now. And that's probably what's going on, because all those Kangs are free, because those timelines are not being pruned, they're being allowed to grow. And so every timeline, because my theory was that Kang was pruning every single timeline that led to another Kang. I think there was always still a multiverse just wrapped into the sacred timeline, But, if the decision that you get black coffee today instead of iced caramel mocha somehow leads to Nathaniel Richards being born, he was nipping that timeline. Sip, and destroying it. So that way it would never happen. So in that way, it kind of makes sense. It's kind of like Loki kind of did the same thing that Sylvie did and just let all the Kangs free. And I guess we'll just have to find out what happens. So the multiversal war will obviously still occur. I don't think there was a way for Loki to make this happen without allowing the Kangs to be free. And so I think this is kind of his conclusion, but I feel like it's not the last of him at the same time. Because Loki was also very cognizant of the fact that these Kangs, if he's saying is true, they're dangerous and they're going to kill a lot of people as well. And I think somehow, some of the line, I don't even know if Marvel has created it yet. I think Loki realized that by taking over, I can still help against the fight against Kang, because it's going to come. Maybe because Loki will see it coming and he'll see when, he'll be able to give some kind of warning and let the Avengers know or something, which might be cool. Maybe he'll leave like a signal for Thor that like only Thor would understand, and he'll have to relay that to the Avengers, which would also be cool because Loki, he won't be able to travel into these timelines because he's watching them from afar. But it makes me think that Loki also has a contingency plan. And it makes me think that somehow we're going to get some kind of reveal. I don't know if if Marvel Studios even knows what it is, but I think they're like, if we leave it right here, we can do something where Loki's going to help in the multiversal conflict, because I don't think he would just take over, see all this. Or maybe he's like, if I take over these branches, I can see when the conflict's going to happen and make a decision based off of that. Because like when Sylvie killed Kang, she wasn't taking over, so she has no idea. She doesn't have the power to figure out when is Kang going to come, when is he going to attack, what's going to happen, until it's too late, potentially. So now Loki will be able to see it coming, in theory, and like I said, maybe give some kind of message, maybe do something. I don't know, but it's very exciting. I think Loki Season 2 is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I think the whole journey, him saying like, I paved the road for you to learn to time slip. I don't think Kang paved the road for Loki to destroy the temporal loom. I think that was not part of his plan. And I think we're going to see a lot of Kangs. And it's really sad because like my original Quantum Mania theory was that Kang in the quantum realm had looked at a timeline where I was thinking that the Kang from the quantum realm was one who fought in that multiversal war that occurs in the future, but escaped to the quantum realm because he knew that Kang wouldn't be able to send troops into it, and he knew that he would cause a Nexus event if he ever left the quantum realm. So he stayed in there, and then he studied timelines, just like He Who Remains says, but then he saw a timeline where He Who Remains dies. And I think He Who Remains saw the same timeline. And I'm like, he realized that timeline occurs, or maybe he even could have been messing with timelines, and then eventually found a way to kill He Who Remains without him leaving the quantum realm. And that all started when Ant-Man shrunk into the quantum realm in Ant-Man, the very first one. And I thought it would have been super cool if we get the reveal that, because for some reason Ant-Man figures out how to get out, but Janet doesn't. And maybe that's because like she doesn't have the size reducers and size upgraders, and those are the only things, but like Ant-Man figures out how to put it in his belt and make himself grow bigger. And I'm like, how cool would it have been if they revealed that when Ant-Man got trapped in the quantum realm and we see him shrinking, the part that we don't see is that Kang's forces kidnap him, wipe his memories of being in the quantum realm, and leave him with just a thought to put his size enhancer in his belt, and then when he restores to full size, he doesn't remember how he got out of the quantum realm, because Kang needs it to happen a very certain way, so that way Loki will go down this journey that will kill He Who Remains. It could have been a really interesting way to kind of set up everything that the Avengers did in Endgame was all part of this Kang's plan. And then he could have won in Ant-Man Quantumania and escaped the quantum realm. But that's not what happened, obviously. They just chose to create a very different narrative of him being trapped down there with Janet, but after the Council of Kangs intervened, because Kang died, because the branches are... it's just it feels like it's still a separate story. It doesn't feel connected to Loki. And I know everyone wants to make their own stories right now. But the part that made the MCU work so well is because it was all like interconnected and things bounced off of each other. So I guess we will see. But in the meantime, let me know what you guys thought about the Loki season 2 finale. Like I said, I thought it was fantastic. Um, and I was gonna say I can't wait for more, but we won't be seeing Loki for a long time. So it was a good goodbye to Tom Hiddleston and everything he's done for the role. And yeah, I think I'm gonna watch Avengers and then the finale of Loki season 2. Yeah. All right, Blurds. Until next time.